gold mask of Tutankhamun is recognized as one of the world's most famous works of art.
King Tut's mask has been perfect and silent for centuries, but new science is making the gold talk at last. Quantum imaging has just looked into the atomic history of the metal to find seams that were invisible before. These scans show that the face of the mask was cut out and replaced with a new one thousands of years ago.
Was the mask created for Tutankhamun or for someone else?
It was a clever trick that fooled everyone until this very moment. The real story involves a missing queen and a secret plan to bury a king with stolen goods. This discovery is hands down the biggest find in decades. Golden Mask Mystery. The story starts in 1922 in a dusty place called the Valley of the Kings. A man named Howard Carter had been digging in the sand for years, looking for anything that belonged to a forgotten king named Tutankhamun. Most people told him he was wasting his time because they thought all the tombs had been robbed a long time ago. But Carter did not give up and eventually found a stone step hidden under some old huts. That step led to a door, and that door led to the greatest treasure ever found. When he finally broke through the wall, he held up a candle and saw gold everywhere. There were golden chariots, statues of black jackals, and huge boxes that were covered in gold leaf. It took years just to empty the first room, but the biggest prize was still waiting inside the burial chamber. Inside a massive stone box, there were 3 different coffins nested together like dolls. The last one was made of solid gold and was so heavy that it took several men to lift the lid. Underneath that lid was the mummy of the king, and resting on his shoulders was the most beautiful thing Carter had ever seen. It was the golden death mask, shining as if it had been made yesterday instead of 3,000 years ago. This object is 21 inches tall and weighs over 22 pounds. To put that in perspective, it is heavier than a bowling ball, but every bit of it is made of high-quality gold. The blue stripes on the headpiece are made of dark blue glass and stones like lapis lazuli. The eyes are made of white quartz and black obsidian, making it look like the king is staring right at the viewers. To the people of ancient Egypt, this mask was not just art. It was a magical tool meant to keep the soul safe while it traveled through the land of the dead. They believed that if the body was destroyed, the soul could live inside the mask instead. That is why the face had to look exactly like the person who died. The gold was seen as the skin of the gods, and wearing it meant the king was becoming a god himself. Even though the mask looks perfect, there is a big problem with how it was made. King Tut died very suddenly when he was only 19 years old, and this created a huge panic in the palace. Egyptian religion was very strict about how a burial had to happen. From the moment the king took his last breath, the priests had exactly 70 days to finish everything. This included drying out the body with salt, wrapping it in miles of linen, and making all the furniture for the tomb. Just think about that for a minute. Making a 22-pound gold mask from scratch is a job that should take many months or even years. The artist had to melt the gold, hammer it into a thin sheet, and then carve every tiny detail by hand. Doing that in less than 70 days while also making 3 giant coffins seems impossible. When looking closely at the tomb, the signs of a rush job are everywhere. The tomb is tiny compared to other kings, and the paintings on the walls were done so fast that the paint was still wet when they closed the door. Some of the pictures even have brown spots on them from mold because the walls did not have time to dry. Even the stone box that held the coffins was cracked because the workers had to force it through a door that was too small. This makes people wonder if the mask was also part of the rush. Researchers started to notice that some of the objects in the tomb did not actually have King Tut's name on them originally. They found statues that looked like girls and jewelry that was made for a woman. If the priests were running out of time, they might have just grabbed things from the palace storage. This would be like giving someone a used gift because you forgot to buy a new one for their birthday. The mask had some weird details that did not fit a male king at all. Beard accident investigation. For a long time, the mask sat in a museum in Cairo and no one was allowed to touch it. But in 2014, something terrible happened during a simple cleaning. A worker accidentally knocked the braided beard off the chin of the mask. The beard is a very important symbol of power for a king, and the museum workers were terrified of getting in trouble. Instead of calling for help, they tried to fix it themselves using a tube of strong hardware store glue called epoxy. They did a terrible job and left big clumps of yellow glue all over the gold chin. They even scratched the gold while trying to scrape the extra glue off with a metal tool. When the news got out, the whole world was angry that such a treasure was treated so badly. A team of experts from Germany was brought in to fix the mess and save the mask. They had to use heat and special tools to melt the bad glue without hurting the ancient gold. While they had the mask apart, they got to look at the inside for the first time in nearly 100 years. They used machines that shoot light at the metal to see what it was made of. They thought they would find proof that the mask was made in different pieces, but the results surprised them. The gold in the face matched the gold in the rest of the mask perfectly. They also saw that the blue glass stripes would have melted if anyone tried to weld a new face onto the mask. Because of this, the experts told everyone that the mask was original and made just for King Tut. They reattached the beard with natural beeswax and put it back on display. It seemed like the mystery was over and the hand-me-down theory was dead. Everyone went back to believing the mask was a unique masterpiece made just for the boy king. Most people thought the case was closed after the beard repair, but a few scientists were not happy. They knew that ancient workers were incredibly smart and could hide their work better than we think. If the craftsman had used the same batch of gold to hide a seam, a regular scan would never see it. To find the truth, a secret group called Project Osiris decided to use a brand new technology called quantum resonance imaging. This is not like an X-ray that just takes a flat picture. It shoots tiny particles that bounce off the atoms inside the metal. These particles act like tiny balls that tell the computer exactly how the gold was hammered and heated thousands of years ago. It can see the history of the object layer by layer. Basically, the machine can tell if one part of the gold was cooled down while another part was still being worked on. In late 24, the team brought their huge scanner into the museum after the doors were locked for the night. They pointed the sensors at the golden face and let the computer run for hours. As the data started to come in, the scientists realized they were seeing things that were completely invisible to every other machine. They saw that the metal grains in certain areas were arranged in a weird way. It was like seeing the ghost of the original work before it was changed. The machine started to build a three-dimensional map of the mask's entire life. It showed that the gold had been moved and reshaped in a very specific pattern. The team leader realized that the old experts had been fooled by the amazing skill of the ancient artists. The screen started to show that the ears of the mask were not what they seemed to be at all. Plugged ears discovery. The first major shock from the high-resolution quantum scan emerged unexpectedly from the ears of the mask. To understand the gravity of this anomaly, one must first understand the rigid, unyielding dogmas of ancient Egyptian iconography. In the canon of pharaonic art, the rules were absolute, religious statutes rather than mere aesthetic guidelines. While children and women were frequently depicted with pierced ears to accommodate heavy jewelry, adult male kings were almost never shown this way in their funerary equipment. The presence of open earring holes on the death mask of King Tutankhamun had plagued Egyptologists for decades. It was a glaring gender inconsistency that many dismissed as a quirk of the stylistic revolution of the Amarna period. However, the quantum scan dismantled the stylistic choice theory with forensic precision. As the imaging depth increased, bypassing the surface glare of the gold, the data revealed that the holes were not open at all. They had been filled. The scan exposed solid gold plugs, engineered with such masterful deception that they remained invisible to the naked eye for over 3 millennia. The ancient goldsmiths had hammered these plugs into place and polished the surface until the seams vanished. Yet they could not fool the subatomic imaging. The scan mapped the metallic grain structure, revealing a distinct boundary where the chaotic hammered lattice of the plugs clashed with the smoother cast structure of the surrounding earlobe. This was the first definitive proof of a deliberate obfuscation. Someone had desperately tried to masculinize a mask that was never intended for a king. Things became significantly more complex and scientifically damning when the analysis moved to the face itself. For a century, the world has stared into the eyes of the boy king, believing they were seeing a portrait cast in a single divine moment. The quantum data shattered this illusion. The scanner identified a microscopic fissure, a line only a few atoms wide, tracing the entire perimeter of the face. This atomic scar was evidence of a sophisticated cut-and-paste operation. The face was not part of the original casting. The data suggests that ancient artisans working under extreme time pressure had physically severed the original face from the headdress. They then inserted a new visage, Tutankhamun's actual portrait, using a cold welding technique applied from the interior of the mask to ensure the front appeared seamless. This forensic revelation finally provided a logical answer to a long-standing visual puzzle: the subtle chromatic discrepancy. The face of the mask radiates a slightly redder hue compared to the yellow-gold brilliance of the Nemus headcloth and collar. Previously attributed to tarnishing or cleaning damage, the scan confirmed that the face was composed of a completely different gold alloy, likely possessing a higher copper content, specifically chosen or manufactured to match Tutankhamun's skin tone or simply because it was the available stock during the rush. The conclusion was inescapable. The most famous artifact in human history was a recycled composite. The priesthood had cannibalized a female pharaoh's funerary regalia to bury the young king. With the physical structure compromised, the only remaining mystery lay in the identity of the original owner. The investigation turned to the back of the mask, where the spell from the Book of the Dead is inscribed to guide the soul into the afterlife. To the naked eye, the hieroglyphs clearly spell out the titulary of Tutankhamun. But metal possesses a memory. When a chisel strikes gold, it does not just displace material. It compresses the atomic lattice deep below the surface, creating stress patterns that persist even if the surface is later smoothed over or recarved. The quantum scanner, operating like a technological necromancer, began to map these atomic ghosts. It looked past the visible inscriptions to the deeper strata of the metal, seeking the stress fractures of erased words. Slowly, the computer reconstruction peeled away the layers of Tutankhamun's name. The underlying atomic distortions coalesced into a different cartouche entirely. It was not the name of a male predecessor nor a minor royal. The original glyphs spelled out Ankeperur Neferneferuaten. This was the specific throne name used by Queen Nefertiti during the shadowy period when she ruled Egypt as a full pharaoh following the death of her husband Akhenaten. Nefertiti was not merely a queen consort. She was King Tut's stepmother and a co-regent who ascended to the supreme power. For nearly a century, historians have hunted for her burial, puzzled by the absence of her funerary equipment despite her immense status. The scan provided the chilling answer. She wasn't missing. She was erased. If the most famous object in the world is a lie, are we missing other huge secrets from the past? Tell us what you think about this stolen mask in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more.